My mother-in-law said you'll never be one of us and burned my childhood journal at dinner. The next hours, her friends heard what she did and laughed until she cried in the restroom. Did you really just throw my journal into the fire? I asked her, my voice steady, colder than I expected. Valerie didn't even flinch. She took another sip of wine and smiled with perfect lipstick. I told you, Arya. You'll never be one of us. My husband Marcus sat beside her, silent, eyes on his plate. 3 hours later, Valerie's friends read something I'd quietly emailed them during dessert, and their laughter echoed from my kitchen like a wildfire. Valerie ended up locked in my bathroom, sobbing. But not for the reason she wanted anyone to believe. I never expected to find myself on Reddit writing about my in-laws, much less about something this surreal. But here I am. And if I don't spill it all out, I might just choke on it. I need to get this off my chest, because no therapist, no friend, and certainly not my husband has been able to make me feel heard about what happened that night. To give you some context, I'm 34, female, and I've been married to Marcus, 38 male, for 6 years. We met in college, started out as friends in a creative writing course, ironic now, and slowly found our way into something resembling a relationship. He was calm, steady, and didn't seem to mind that I wasn't the cookie-cutter Southern belle his family seemed to specialize in. Or so I thought. Marcus's family is old Savannah stock, genteel on the surface, tight-lipped underneath. They host fundraisers, attend historical society balls, and pride themselves on their legacy. His mother, Valerie, is at the helm of it all. The woman has a powerful grip on appearances and a razor-sharp tongue she hides behind genteel smiles. I grew up very differently. Raised by a single father in a modest house near Forsyth Park. My mother passed when I was 12, and I spent most of my teenage years journaling, volunteering at the local library, and trying to make sense of my quiet grief in pages of scribbled thoughts. Those journals were never meant for anyone else. They were where I stored my younger self. My fears. My anger. My dreams. After Marcus and I got married, Valerie was icy. That's the polite word. She always made a show of being gracious, but there were digs. Constant ones. She'd comment on my clothes. My career, I'm a freelance editor, apparently not a real job. Even my voice. I tried to ignore her for Marcus's sake, but it wore me down. Still, I tried. For 6 years I tried to win even a sliver of her approval. Hosting her when she visited. Smiling through comments like, "You're not what I pictured" when Marcus said he was dating someone creative. Cooking elaborate dinners when she stayed over. Laughing at jokes I didn't find funny. I even wore pearls once. Hated it. Which brings me to the night everything came undone. Marcus had invited Valerie and 3 of her close friends to our home in Charleston for dinner. It was supposed to be a kind of peace offering. I'd been distant since her last visit, where she told me she didn't believe emotions should be aired so freely. I'd cried during a documentary we were watching. That was my crime. I didn't want to host this dinner. I told Marcus that. But he insisted. He wanted me to give his mother another chance. So I spent the entire day preparing. Homemade pot roast, rosemary potatoes, fresh biscuits from scratch, a lemon tart she once complimented, though she added it was a bit too tangy. I ironed the linens. I even put fresh hydrangeas in the centerpiece. Valerie arrived like she owned the place. One of her friends, Patrice, brought a bottle of overpriced wine and complimented our dining room. The others, Gwen and Cecilia, floated in with the scent of high-end perfume and that quiet air of self-importance women like them carry so easily. Dinner started quietly enough. Small talk. The kind you rehearse in your head before they arrive. Halfway through the meal, Valerie began eyeing the bookshelf. She always did this. Like she was checking for signs of refinement. For credentials. I saw her narrow her eyes at a stack of papers I'd been organizing on the bottom shelf, a mix of my writing and old notebooks I'd pulled from storage. Before I could stop her, she reached down and pulled one out. It was one of my childhood journals. A worn, leather-bound notebook with my name scrawled in childish print on the first page. I froze. "What's this?" she asked, already flipping through. "It's personal," I said quickly. "Just old writing." But she didn't stop. "Oh," she said, her voice drenched in amused condescension. "This is adorable. Listen to this, ladies, I wish my mom could see me now. I miss her even when I'm happy, and sometimes I pretend she's still in the room with me. Isn't that precious?" She laughed. "So did the others?" Hesitantly. Not unkindly. Just awkwardly. I could feel heat creeping up my neck. "Valerie, put that down," I said. She didn't. Instead, she looked at me directly, a cruel twist at the corner of her mouth. "You think this kind of drama is endearing? You'll never be one of us, Arya. No matter how many biscuits you bake or sob stories you carry around." She walked straight to our fireplace and, before anyone could stop her, tossed the journal in. It caught quickly. I don't even remember reacting at first. I just stood there, numb, watching something that had held pieces of my soul for 2 decades curl and blacken into ash. Something snapped inside me, but it wasn't rage. It was something quieter. Something colder. Marcus didn't say a word. Not when she burned it. Not when I left the room. I went to our bedroom, locked the door, and sat with my laptop. What Valerie didn't know is that I'd digitized all my journals during college. And what she really didn't know was that I'd overheard a conversation she'd had last fall in our backyard, whispering into her phone about a little Palm Beach problem she thought no one remembered. Well, I remembered. And so did the police report I'd found online. Valerie had once been arrested in Palm Beach for attempting to bribe a police officer after being pulled over, while driving drunk, with one of her friend's husbands in the passenger seat. The report had been buried, and thanks to money and family reputation, it never saw the light of day in Savannah. Until that night. I emailed the PDF to all 3 of her friends. I added no context. No subject line. Just a silent gift. Then I rejoined the dinner, served dessert like nothing had happened, and sat back down. 15 minutes later, I heard the ping of incoming emails. Patrice was the first to check hers. She paled. Then turned to Valerie. "Val, is this real?" Valerie blinked. "What are you talking about?" The others checked their phones. Gwen made a noise, half gasp, half laugh. "Oh my God," she said. "This is you, isn't it?" Valerie reached for her phone, saw the email, and her face twisted into something I'd never seen before. Fear. They weren't laughing with her anymore. They laughed, but it was sharp. Cruel. Cecilia whispered something that made Patrice nearly snort wine out her nose. Gwen was doubled over, wiping tears from her eyes. Valerie stood abruptly. "I need a moment." She stormed down the hall and locked herself in our bathroom. And that's where she stayed. I could hear her crying from the kitchen. Not gentle crying. Sobbing. Loud, gasping sobs. No one went after her. Not Marcus. Not her friends. And certainly not me. The sound of her sobs behind the bathroom door should have made me feel something. Pity. Guilt. Satisfaction, maybe. But I didn't feel any of that. I just felt done. Done trying to win her over. Done trying to prove I belonged. Done pretending that my silence somehow preserved peace in our marriage. It never did. All it did was make me smaller. The silence in the dining room was thick now, punctuated only by an occasional stifled giggle or the clink of a spoon on a dessert plate. I sat back down at the head of the table, folded my hands neatly in my lap, and looked across at Marcus. He still hadn't said a word. Patrice leaned forward and cleared her throat, her voice only slightly shaky from the tension. "So, that was a surprise," she said, attempting lightness but clearly rattled. "Did you know about that, Marcus?" He looked up like he'd just been dropped into a conversation mid-sentence. "What?" The Palm Beach thing, Gwen said, waving her phone slightly. You didn't know? He looked at me, confused. What did you send them? I didn't answer. I didn't have to. Valerie had done that part for me. Gwen leaned back in her chair, her laughter replaced now by something more curious. Calculating. Wow, she said, glancing toward the hallway. She always acted so, well, I guess we all have our skeletons. But this one's juicy. I'm sorry you had to be in the middle of this, I said calmly. Really? That wasn't my intention. It was a lie, of course. But not completely. They shrugged. No one seemed particularly upset about the wrongdoing. If anything, they were entertained. Cecilia even muttered, "Guess she's not as perfect as she thinks." The bathroom door remained closed. The sobbing had slowed into soft, hiccupy gasps. I didn't care enough to go check. She wasn't my responsibility. But Marcus was. After everyone had left, the house smelled like lemon zest and quiet tension. I started clearing the dishes. He stood by the window, still as a statue. Finally, I broke the silence. You didn't say anything. He turned, blinking. What? When she read my journal. When she burned it. When she humiliated me in my own house. You didn't say a single word. His voice was small. I didn't know what to do. You could have asked her to stop. You could have told her it wasn't okay. She's my mom. I stopped stacking plates. And I'm your wife. He looked tired. So did I. But the difference was, I was done being tired on behalf of other people. That journal, I started, but my voice caught. That journal was the only thing I had left from when my mom was still alive. I wrote to her in it. After she died. 4 years. She used to read my writing when I was a kid. And now I don't even have the last words I ever wrote to her. Marcus looked like he wanted to say something. Maybe even apologize. But instead, he just said, "You shouldn't have sent that email." I stared at him for a long moment. I shouldn't have sent it? I repeated. He nodded slowly. It was cruel. I laughed. Not because it was funny. But because the sound was the only thing I could manage that didn't come out as a scream. You know what's cruel, Marcus? Watching your wife get humiliated in front of guests. Watching your mother throw something deeply personal into a fire and then sitting there like a scared little boy, hoping it'll all go away. That's cruel. He flinched, but I didn't care anymore. She spent years making me feel small, I continued. Unworthy. Like I was some kind of charity project you brought home. And every time she did it, you made excuses for her. You gave her the benefit of the doubt. But never me. I didn't wait for him to respond. Instead, I went to the bookshelf where she'd pulled the journal from. There was a small stack of others, thankfully untouched. I picked them up carefully, walked them to the bedroom, and locked the door behind me. I sat on the bed for a long time, staring at them. My hands trembled. I opened one, not the burned one, but another from the same time period. Inside were pages of heartbreak, loneliness, and the quiet, desperate hope that someone would one day understand me. That someone would see me. Valerie didn't see me. Marcus didn't either. And that realization, more than anything else, was what cracked something open in me. I didn't sleep that night. Not really. I lay in bed with the door locked, the untouched stack of journals beside me like a lifeline I'd forgotten I needed. Every now and then, I'd hear movement in the house, Marcus pacing, maybe. Or just standing there outside the door, not knocking, not speaking. In the morning, he was gone. I didn't ask where. I didn't care. What I didn't expect was for Valerie to still be there. At first, I thought she had left quietly in the night. That would have been her style, slip away, leave a carefully worded text about needing space and a vague suggestion of being the true victim. But I found her in the guest room, sitting upright in bed with her makeup smudged and her hair still in the twist she'd worn the night before. She looked smaller. Her eyes met mine for a brief second as I passed by the open door on my way to the kitchen. I didn't say anything. Neither did she. I made coffee. It was the only thing I could do that didn't feel performative. The silence in the house was different now. Not the tense, artificial politeness that had settled in before. This was something raw. Exposed. Like a wound after the bandage is ripped off. I don't know how long she stayed in that room. A few hours, maybe. I heard the door open, her steps soft down the hallway, the rustle of her coat. Then the front door shut. No note. No goodbye. When Marcus returned that evening, he acted as if nothing had happened. I didn't bring it up. I didn't want to be the one to force accountability out of him anymore. Let him live with the silence if he chose it. But of course, it didn't stay silent for long. That week, word got around. I don't know who forwarded the email, but someone did. Maybe Patrice. Maybe Gwen. But within days, the wrongdoing had trickled into Savannah's social circuit like a slow leak in a boat. I started getting strange messages on Instagram. A few "Are you okay?" notes from acquaintances who never once checked in before. Valerie went dark online. Deleted her Facebook. Cancelled a DAR event she was hosting. Even pulled out of her beloved Historical Preservation Society fundraiser, which was apparently the social event of the season. Marcus was furious. "You ruined her reputation," he said one night, pacing across our living room, his voice low but shaking. "She did that all by herself," I replied. I just held up the mirror. "You could have handled it differently." I stared at him for a long beat. "Like you handled dinner?" That shut him up. But it didn't end the coldness. It hung in the house like humidity in August, thick and stifling. We stopped sleeping in the same room. We still lived under one roof, but barely spoke. Every now and then, he'd make a weak attempt to return to normal, ask if I wanted to watch a show, or go to dinner, but it all felt obligatory. Like someone checking boxes instead of rebuilding a life. Meanwhile, I started digging through the rest of my journals. Rereading the thoughts of a younger me made me feel strangely protective of her. The girl who used to believe people would love her if she just tried hard enough. If she just became more palatable. More quiet. More agreeable. That girl had died the night Valerie burned my journal. What took her place was someone who didn't have the energy to keep asking for respect that should have been given freely. The shift wasn't sudden. It was gradual. Quiet. I started going out alone. Coffee shops, bookstores, long walks near the water. I found a rhythm that didn't include Marcus. And I didn't miss him when he wasn't there. One afternoon, I ran into Gwen. Alone. No pearls, no pastel scarf. Just a quiet cardigan and oversized sunglasses that couldn't quite hide the curiosity in her eyes. We were both in line at a bakery near the market. She tilted her head when she saw me. "Aria," she said, almost cautiously. "Gwen." She hesitated before speaking again. "I just wanted to say. I'm sorry. For that night." I blinked. "Sorry for laughing?" She nodded. "That too. I didn't know it was, God, I didn't know it was your mother you were writing to." I looked down at my coffee cup. The warmth grounded me. I didn't want her sympathy, but I wasn't cruel enough to spit it back in her face either. "She burned the last memory I had of her," I said quietly. "I was a child." And she laughed. "She's not, well, you know. She's been unraveling for a while now. A lot of us have known. We just didn't think it would spill out like that." There it was again. That subtle way people protect those who harm others, until the consequences are too loud to ignore. "She hurt you," Gwen added. "And your husband should have said something. We all thought he would." I met her eyes. So did I. She reached out, lightly touched my arm. If you ever need anything, or just want to get a drink, let me know. You're not alone. It was kind. Maybe even sincere. But I wasn't sure I trusted it yet. I wasn't sure I trusted anyone connected to that world anymore. Still, I nodded. Thanks. She left with a box of scones. I left with a strange sense of closure I didn't ask for. That evening, Marcus asked me if I'd considered therapy. Why? I asked. I don't know. It just seems like you're angry all the time. I laughed. Out loud. The sound startled him. I'm not angry, I said. I'm just not pretending anymore. He didn't respond. Just stared at me like he was meeting someone new. Maybe he was. Because I wasn't the same woman he'd married. The version of me who tolerated his silence, his excuses, and his loyalty to a mother who treated me like dirt, that woman was gone. And this new version? She was just getting started. After that night, things didn't explode. They just disintegrated. Day by day, piece by piece, the marriage I had put my entire self into became more and more hollow. We weren't fighting. Not exactly. But we weren't connecting either. We coexisted in the same space like two polite strangers, carefully not touching anything sharp. Marcus tried to pretend we were working on it. He suggested weekend getaways, booked a couples therapist, even bought flowers once, which sat in their vase unopened and then died without fanfare. What he never did, not once, was acknowledge what had really broken us. His silence that night. His lack of defense. His loyalty to her over me. I went to therapy. Alone. I didn't tell him at first. I didn't go for the marriage, I went for myself. For that younger version of me still echoing through the ash of my burned journal. I needed to figure out how I'd become the kind of woman who let people walk across her boundaries for years without ever raising her voice. It took about 4 months before I knew, truly, that I was done. It wasn't rage. It wasn't even grief. It was clarity. One morning, while Marcus was at work, I boxed up my journals. I packed a suitcase. I printed out a single sheet of paper and left it on the kitchen table with my ring on top. It wasn't a letter. Just a list. I needed you to stand up for me. You didn't. I needed you to acknowledge what she did. You wouldn't. I needed to feel safe with you. I haven't in years. I signed my name and walked out of the house that I had spent the better part of a decade trying to make feel like mine. I moved into a small apartment in downtown Asheville, old brick, hardwood floors, and just enough space for me and my thoughts. It was quiet, but it was mine. I didn't speak to Marcus for weeks. But Valerie? She couldn't resist. She sent an email. Then a handwritten note. Then called twice from a blocked number. I ignored them all. But what she didn't know, what no one in her circle knew yet, was that I had been working on something else. Something that would be harder to ignore. You see, during those long therapy sessions and quiet nights alone, I started writing again. Really writing. Not just journal entries. A manuscript. A memoir. I changed the names. I fictionalized just enough to protect myself legally, but the bones of the story were all mine. The Southern matriarch who publicly torched her daughter-in-law's memories. The woman who hid her scandalous past under a cloak of manners and pearls. The spineless son who stayed silent. The slow rise of a woman who'd had enough. I didn't write it for revenge. At least not at first. I wrote it to reclaim the story. To put down on paper what had been ripped away from the flames. I submitted the manuscript under a pen name to a small independent publisher that specialized in Southern women's narratives. It got picked up. 6 months later, it hit shelves under the title, Ashes and Elegance. It wasn't a bestseller. But it made waves. Especially in Savannah. Especially when a few of Valerie's old friends, who clearly hadn't learned to stop gossiping, started connecting the dots. The burned journal. The Palm Beach story. The unforgettable bathroom meltdown. And the kicker? One of her acquaintances, a retired columnist, posted a cheeky review on Facebook, "Fiction, my pearls." We know who this is. And let me just say, she should have left that journal alone. It spread faster than garden gossip at a summer fundraiser. Valerie's standing in her social circle? Never quite recovered. People were polite, Savannah never stops being polite, but the phone calls slowed. The invitations thinned out. And when she did show her face at an event, she could feel it. The eyes. The smirks. The half-turned shoulders of women who finally knew she wasn't untouchable. And as for Marcus? He sent me an email a few months later. Just one line, "I read your book." I didn't reply. My life now is quieter. But fuller. I teach writing workshops at a local community center. Mostly older women who've been through some things: divorces, deaths, betrayals. We sit in a circle with tea and notebooks, and every week, someone tells the truth for the first time in years. I don't hide who I am anymore. I don't shrink to make others comfortable. And I never, ever apologize for being too emotional. Because somewhere in a box in my closet, safe and whole, are the rest of my journals. The ones Valerie didn't get to touch. The ones I still write in now. And when I reread them, I don't see weakness. I see a woman who rose from ashes with her head high, and made the fire her own. And to anyone out there dealing with a toxic MIL or a partner who won't stand beside you, listen to your gut. People show you who they are. And sometimes, the most powerful thing you can do is walk away and write your own ending.